All right, let me pray. Father, as we approach you this evening, we want to make sure that your word becomes our guide. Help us to understand the things in which you've told us, future things, but just really about the angels that you have created, even the fallen angels, and help us to understand how they are to teach us about yourself. And we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, we are in Revelation 13. We talked about it last week a little bit, but we want to look at it again. Remember, we're following the theme of understanding the angels, and we're still this last little bit of understanding Satan, and we're going to start with Dave. It says, "And the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns, 7 heads, and his horns were 10 diadems, and on his head were blasphemous names." Now, we're not going to get into all the possibilities of the 10 diadems. Just try to focus on what we can learn and observe from Satan here.
So Satan is the dragon.
Yep.
So he's a dragon standing on the shore, and the beast is the Antichrist. So
Right.
Satan is either calling him out or he's waiting for him to get there. And
He's somehow interacting with him.
Yes.
So he's involved himself. Probably the sand on the seashore is probably the nations, but again, he's involved in what else? The 10 horns and 7 heads probably has to do with leaders.
Leaders,
Yeah.
kings and leaders, and I think are called the diadems or kingdoms or something.
Yeah. Yeah, so we realize that Satan, angels have an influence, but they can't have necessarily a direct influence. It's not like he appears and everybody gets to see him. So there's emissaries or people which he uses. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet was like a bear, and his mouth was like the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority.
Okay, you talk about dragon's relationship with the beast, right?
Yeah, we're just trying to figure out, again, making observations about the angelic part.
Well, the dragon was behind the beast. Controlling the beast.
Right, so Satan gives him his power.
Right.
So it's his power, right?
Right.
So
Satan's power.
Satan has power. He also has what?
Throne.
He has a throne, and he has great authority. Mm-hmm. Whether it's delegated at this time, it's probably more delegated, have already been delegated based upon the fall of man. And the leopard's probably about speed, and his feet like a bear. It's talking about the beast, his, kind of ripping capacity, type fierce.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So the beast has his throne and great authority. Or is that, that's what we're talking about. The beast who has the dragon or Satan gave him his power and throne and great authority.
Right. But part of it is that it's Satan's ability to give, because remember, he has the rulers of the world, so he's the one who gave it to him, but it's really delegated, it's interconnected with him and his kind of throne and his kind of power and his kind of authority.
Okay, so he's ruling over some part of the earth.
Right.
Okay.
Right, because we can see that from the previous verse about the earth. So this is the end times related to his ability to influence. So it may be something special, but it's at least something that this is how he exercises some control and his authority on the earth. Alicia, verse 3, "And I saw one of his heads that had been slain, a fatal wound which was healed, and the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast." Now, this is a little bit about not the angels, but we got to tie this together to the next verse. You want to try that?
Sure.
All sorts of imagery, but...
So, heads here, does that still mean power?
It could be one of the heads or authorities. So it's just talking about one of these representatives of power. So it could be talking that he is one of the heads. And
so it's just not one of his heads?
No.
Okay. Okay, so it's been slain and it's wounded.
As if slain.
Oh, okay.
Right, so he has some sort of wound, right?
Okay. Yep.
That appears, he appears to be healed from it.
Okay.
So in a normal circumstance, they would have considered that would be fatal.
Okay.
Right?
Yep, and now the whole earth is amazed.
Amazed because of what?
Because of the healing?
Yeah, because he's healed. He's kind of like, you'll see in a minute, basically he gets healed, or he survives, okay? He survives this. It's probably some sort of hostile military thing.
Okay.
But what was the reaction? They were amazed, and what did they do?
And they're following him.
Yeah, so they follow the beast. So this is Satan's on earth, probably referred to as the Antichrist. The idea is that described as a beast. Aaron, verse 4, it says, and they worshiped the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast who is able to wage war with him?
So it seems the interconnection why Satan does this is actually for himself.
Yeah. What does he get out of it? What does
he wants what God gets, which is worship.
Yeah.
That's his ultimate goal. So,
Yep.
And so it does seem that they understand that he's the one who gave the beast authority too. So there's some interaction how that the two are working together. So.
Notice both of them are worshipped, but yet it's considered worshiping. When they worship the one, they're worshiping the other too. Right? And why is he?
When we worship the Son, it's like worshiping the Father.
Right.
It always seems to be parallel.
Yeah. A diabolical substitute.
Yeah.
All right, what about this waging war thing?
It's sort of like this authority, his ability shows it almost like he's the top. Nobody can fight against him.
Right. It seems like who's ever attacked him, they thought they were going to some sort of assassination or overwhelming. He survives it. He survives it, and he comes up on top, and then he's the guy in charge. So they're amazed by that. This is their amazement because he wages war. Verse 5, Marinella, there was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemy, and the authority to act for 42 months was given him.
Well, he's going to be blaspheming God.
Right. Blasphemy is what?
It's like cursing God, whatever.
It could be cursing God, or it could be referring to himself as God, worshiping the Antichrist. Either one is blasphemy, saying that he's like.
For 42 months, like that, 3.5 years?
Yeah, 3.5 years. This is telling us it's the last half of the tribulation.
I just have a question. When they were describing the beast and the animals, it's like the same ones they kind of used in Daniel.
Yeah. Did you got that? I didn't point that out, but the same thing is in Daniel. Similar animals being pictured, but what it does is it pictures here. It says like a leopard, but then it says like the feet like a bear.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little different, and a mouth like a lion. So it seems to deviate a little bit, but the animals are still. But it could be due to the fierceness of them or the style of them. So.
Okay. I was just thinking maybe showing the whole world involved in this. I don't know.
Well, it could just have characteristics of those past empires, some of the qualities or the strengths of those empires.
Mm-hmm.
But that's for a different study. We don't want to go too far into that. So that's what we covered Satan. Now we're going to move on to chapter 14, Revelation 14, starting at verse 6. Sue, Revelation 14:6, and I saw another angel, having an eternal gospel to preach to those who live on the earth and to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people. Now, this has got a whole lot of stuff about angels that we have to consider about their capacities. You want to take that apart? Is this a good angel, bad angel?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, right? The son of an angel flying.
Do you think a bad angel is going to preach the gospel?
No.
Okay, so
No, so a good angel
what does it say the angel's doing?
flying in mid-heaven.
Okay, so now all of a sudden we realize angels can fly. This angel can fly. Okay, we always assume that they fly, but the thing is, this actually tells us that they're flying. Okay, mid-heaven. What are we talking about? Mid-heaven. The verse kind of tells us where mid-heaven roughly is by what he's doing.
Okay. So he has an eternal gospel to preach to those who live on the earth.
Yeah, so what does that mean about his ability to communicate to them? He has to be close enough for them to what? Hear him.
To hear it, yeah.
Hear him. So this would not, remember there's heaven, there's the heaven of heavens, and so there's these different, the stars are in one place. So this seems to be an area in which they could actually hear him, right?
Okay.
So we're probably talking a little bit above just the bird level type of a thing, but
Okay.
so that's why it describes mid-heaven, probably between the outer space and real close to the earth. And so let's get into this gospel. Now, you don't have to explain the eternal gospel because Aaron's going to explain it in the next verse. So, but at least we can tell what is the gospel about. What does this verse tell us about the gospel? So, first off, we have an angel proclaiming it. Is that unusual? I mean, do you know any other place where an angel communicated the gospel? They tend not to, right? They tend to appear and tell them to go talk to Peter, okay? But this is the direct involvement. So the angels, if they wanted to, they could do this. But this is, and so the good news, that's the gospel, right? It's eternal, okay? So it's not just talking about temporary good news. It's talking about eternal life, that type of thing. Who's he preaching to?
Those who live on the earth and
Right.
every nation.
Right. Every nation, tribe, tongue, and people. What does that tell you? How's his translation skills? I don't know how he does this. So we have a couple options. Either they can hear him in their language, whatever language he speaks in. They hear him. But he has this gospel, and he's going to communicate to every nation on earth, every tribe. Okay, that's a small people group. Every tongue, that's the language, right? And every people. I don't know how long it takes them to do this, but I mean, this is. But what do we realize with the angels is that they're actively involved in participating in this time in proclaiming the message to those on earth. In the midst of terrible things going on as far as judgments that are going on. So we know who other people are witnessing during this time from Israel. The 144,000. Yeah, so they're out there, but maybe they can't get to some places. It's a huge upheaval. But at this point, it'd be nice if this happened nowadays, but it doesn't. So. I mean, there are times in which angels lead and guide and direct, but here it is a direct message of the gospel. And Aaron, you want to take this one that says, "And he said with a loud voice, 'Fear God, give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made heaven and earth and sea and the springs of water.'"
So what do I do at this point?
Interact with, the thing is, you just go through here and explain the things related to that. We're just getting what this angel is communicating.
Okay.
I mean, you don't have to write a book on it, but...
Right. Well, it seems like he's got two imperatives here. Give him glory and worship him.
Okay.
That's the two imperatives of his message. Well, fear God, sorry.
Fear God, yeah. So there's actually three.
Three.
But part of the other, the worshiping part seems to encompass both.
Yeah.
What about his voice?
Yeah, that was to such a level that the whole earth heard it.
Right. So the thing is that it either hears it at one time or like he's moving around. I mean, that's pretty loud.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're flying in mid-heaven, the thing is that, I mean, we have a hard time hearing just plane noises or whatever you might. This is the eternal gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Tell us about the fear of God. How does that relate?
Well, he says a couple things about God here, that he's the creator, and then he lists heaven and earth, sea, springs of water.
Yep.
But also that the creator, the hour of his judgment has come.
Yep.
Reminds me a lot of the announcement of the angels on that hill to the shepherds who announced the coming of Christ, that it was his, maybe you could say it was his hour of mercy, or maybe his hour of coming to bring a message of grace that was for a season, and now that season is over, and now it's time for judgment.
Yeah, and especially because it says the judgment has come, so it's like the last bit of judgment. So we have fearing God. Part of the message has always been, from beginning to end, about fearing God. Tell us about, what is fearing God, Aaron?
Yeah, I've heard it explained, and I've thought of it in this way, that it's to give him such honor and such place in your thinking and in your, maybe in the worshiping part, even in your praise, but especially in your thinking, that you fear him for his power, for his glory, you give him the correct place he deserves.
Yep.
I would say it would be what that means.
Even as Proverbs, right? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's proper honor and respect for who God is.
Yeah.
That's always been the message. It's not about just getting fire insurance. It's just not. Yeah, we get forgiveness, but it's really about having a right thinking about who God is. What is giving him glory?
Giving him glory has been, you could say, the main motivation of God from the Old Testament to the New, his glory and his redemption of his people from Egypt, for example, that the whole world would know and glorify him. And to give him glory would be similar in fear God, giving him the glory he deserves, the weight of all that he deserves and who he is.
Yeah, so the thing is that it's our reaction to acknowledge who he is and give him the weighty. The word glory comes from weightiness, kavod. And the hour of judgment has come. And we'll find that out about a minute. But worship him who made heaven and earth. It also adds the idea of seas and springs of water. All of those he made. Everything that he makes, all the things that we benefit from, because he is also unraveling them all at this time. So, you ready?
Sure.
You're up. We're saying in another angel, a second one, following him, saying, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who made all the nations drinks of the wine of the passion of her immorality." So,
So a second angel
Yep.
following the first angel,
Yep.
presumably also flying, and kind of with a message that contrasts the first, or at least the hearers that are different than the first, in that this is like fallen Babylon. So it's judgment on Babylon. It's repeated, so it's pretty severe.
Yep.
The word fallen is repeated.
It gives emphasis. Yep, exactly.
Babylon, I want to say, symbolizes man's rebellion against God.
Do you need more? Can you give me any more options? What options could it be?
It could be a literal city.
Yep, so that's the one in Iraq. It could be the literal one.
Right. I'm just thinking back to that original Babylon.
Which is Genesis 11, right?
So a group that said, no, we don't want to fill the earth and subdue it. We're going to collect here and make a name for ourselves. We're going to rebel against this command directly. And then since then, I think Babylon's been used in the prophets and here in Revelation to symbolize all of man's rebellion and a sin, right?
Yeah, the thing is that there's been some that think it's the papacy. There's some that it seems to be both a place and a system. And I think that's where we get that idea. It seems like Babylon and the system started all the way back from Genesis 11. And how I see that is that most everybody wants to make it about how big the tower is, but it actually points it out. It says, let us. And the thing is that it goes through, let us do this, and this is their means. And we've talked about it from the standpoint of Romans 11:36, from him, through him, and to him. It's like, if you find out, it has the reverse of that. It's from ourselves, through ourselves, for ourselves. And that seems to be the established counter display. And I think it pictures Babylon. It could actually be the place. It could be, Peter refers to Babylon, and it gives us a little idea. So it's hard to figure out, but at least encompasses the system, I think. Like you said, I think it encompasses the system that's always been man achievement, man doing it without God type of a thing.
Which contrasts verse 7, where the message is fear God and give him glory. Yeah. Babylon was literally when man tried to steal the glory.
Right.
They tried to make a name for themselves.
Right. They tried to make a name for themselves. They tried to become the focal point because they did it for themselves. The thing is, make a name for ourselves so that we would receive the honor, that we would receive the glory. And so what else do we know about
Sure. So she who has made all the nations.
Yeah.
So that these verses are about the whole world and the nations. Yep. Nations actually originated in Babel, or at least the languages, which are a big contributor to identities that are different from one another. Drink the wine of the passion. This kind of looks like a word, briefly looked it up, that's like rage and anger. I wonder if it's the same kind of word from Psalms that says, why do the nations rage?
Yeah, it's thumos. Okay. Thumos. It's intense passion. It has a lot of emotion to it.
And then of her immorality, which is the porneia, I think.
Yeah.
Which is fornication, but it's also like the larger idea of perversion of a good thing that God has given.
Yep. Yeah, so it could be physical perversion. It could be spiritual perversion. The twisted kind of... and I think the reason why the system fits better is because this system has been going on, and it's fine. The judgment has come, so the system is destroyed. That's the man-made system. And what it is it's in the drinking of the wine. Do you know what that pictures or whatever?
I'll let you talk about it.
Okay. That's fine. The thing is, it's going to come up in reverse, drinking the wine of the wrath of God. It just merely, they've digested this, had to part of who they are. And then like I said, the passion of immorality. So all the intensity of this rebellion against God that's focused in the world system is fallen. So it's kind of like, remember, we've already been to Satan was tossed out completely made to be on the earth. So all of this is following all this. Now the whole system is being judged. And this is the thing that's been going on. It brings it out more in the other chapters. You can look those up. Chapter 16 and chapter 17 about it. But we just want to see what the angel does. Okay, so the angel again announces it. So here you got another announcement by an angel. I mean, talk about first you have this one angel that goes around and announces, then you got the second angel, and this is all before the bowl judgments that come. But so there's an announcement before it gets even worse. Okay, the final closing of ending of the evil system. All right, Susie. And another angel, a third one, following them, saying with a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and his image and receives the mark on his forehead or hand," we'll get to the next part with Dan.
So, number 3 angel.
Yep.
With a loud voice, following the first 2.
Yep.
And he's talking about the beast, worshiping the beast. It's like a warning. If anyone worships the beast and his image and receives the mark on his forehead or on his hand, they will die.
Yeah. They will suffer. Let's just put it in the broad suffer category.
Suffer wrath. I don't know what you want me to.
So what is actually he is announcing? We know he's probably flying too. And the idea is that they're not going to slip this in on somebody. This is not going to be secretive. Because what? It's worshiping the beast.
Right.
So this is going to be clearly defined. It's not like, oh, you fell asleep in the operating table and they put a mark on you. So
it's not going to be believers who worship the true living God. It is people who literally worshiping the beast and
right.
the image.
Yeah, so here again, an angelic announcement taking place, and they are actively involved in it, especially, that's why we picked part of Revelation, is they're actively involved in announcing, proclaiming. Everybody's going to know. This is a severe warning, right? The angel gives a very severe warning. So, anything else, Susie? Yep.
Or on the hand
Yep.
of those who follow the beast.
Yep. And his image is equal to the beast. So that's a different story altogether. Dan. He also will drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is mixed in full strength in the cup of his anger. This is still a speech. And he will be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, in the presence of the Lamb.
This is what happens to everybody in verse 9.
Yep.
They receive mark forehead hand. They're willfully worshiping.
Yep.
They are going to get to drink the wine of his wrath. Full strength of it, cup of anger, full strength, tormented, fire, brimstone.
How is the judgment full strength different than any other strength?
Because I think at this time of things happening, as they get cast into hell and Hades, and eventually after that, it's one step closer to like the eternal lake of fire. So once they're there, it's not going to be good.
Yeah, so somehow it's telling us that this is full strength, meaning that...
And pain in there will probably be the same equal pain for eternity still.
Yeah, and so how is the torment, and how does that relate to angels?
Well, hell was created for Satan and his angels, first
right?
place, and everyone who rejects also gets to go there. Because in the presence of, apparently, just watching these people, this will be a witness, things will be seen.
So what kind of conjuring reason would the presence of the holy angels convey?
It would be agreeing with God and judgment that's happening.
So the angels are agreeing, but what about the people who have to be judged in the presence of angels? What would
understanding they're being judged?
Yeah. So what?
What's the mark? The angels see me.
Well, there must be some sort of shame. There's some sort of shame related to the angels viewing that judgment.
Because the angels are their demons are going to get that same.
Yeah, but this is just talking about the ones who receive the mark. We're just focusing on that, but it tells us that somehow, right here, that the angels are actively somehow viewing these particular people in their torment in the fire and brimstone.
Yeah, they'll get to see it for some reason. Yeah,
so there's some sort of shaming effect. There's some sort of aspect. Whether it's just them or all people in hell, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're like guarding around it or...
Yeah.
It's just an interesting thing that it's in the presence, and we can understand the presence of the Lamb. You know, He's the omniscient judge. But remember, the angels play a role in some aspect. Like it says, if you deny me before men, deny you for God and the Father and the angels. So the angels have some sort of motivating reason or shaming reason or something that I would want to avoid. I don't want to be shamed before the holy angels type of thing.
Yeah, just everywhere. You're not going to look at be able nor safe. You're
right.
You can't blame shift anywhere. It's all on you.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's almost they're put in a different category as opposed to in the presence of all the saints who've died, and it doesn't say that. It uses the holy angels as a category, and you think, why do they must hold some sort of category.
Since the angels were flying around warning, telling them to fear God, and there they are going, oh, what's going on here? Give me the mark. They're being warned. If we warned you, I'm not sure. Anyway,
that could be. So, but you can see how God's wrath, 2 words for torment and wrath of God. They drink. It's the same thing with the wine thing. They talked about earlier the immorality of they drank down that which is Babylon. Now they're going to have to drink down the wrath of God. So, but they give an opportunity. They're preached to. They're proclaimed, and it seems to solidify after this proclamation, determination, in this latter part. So, anything else, Steve?
I don't know if it's it or not.
Okay.
I'm going to shut up.
All right, John. We're going to jump ahead to the 4th angel. He's in verse 15. And another angel came out of the temple, crying out with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, "Put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, because of the harvest of the earth is ripe." Let me back up. I'm going to have to... In verse 14, it says, "Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and sitting on the cloud was one like the Son of Man, having a golden crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand." So who do you think that is? Yeah, it does sound like him, right? He's described as the Son of Man. He has a golden crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Now, what do you do with sickles? Do you know what a sickle is? So a sickle is how they used to cut the like the fields. It's like this long hook blade. Yeah. You got it?
Yeah.
Like so it's like a big slicer. Okay. And we have those one little square things where you whack grass, but basically that's how they cut the wheat in a big thing. So this is what do they use sickles for then? What do they use that for? Cutting the wheat? Because what time of the season is it?
It's the season.
Harvest time?
Harvest.
Yeah. So the thing is that this means there's a harvest taking place. And a harvest, we talked a little bit about Sunday, you weren't here, John, but a harvest is kind of the accounting or the reckoning or the final coming together. It's kind of can have a judgment aspect, but it also has a general aspect, like when he separates the wheat from the tares. It's kind of like a drawing a line saying, okay, you're on this side or you're on that side. Okay.
From Moses said, who's there on God's side from this guy to whoever's
right
over there. So
who has the sickle to decide when it's time to do this harvest? Yeah, I think it's the Lord here describing him. Yeah. All right, Dave, we'll back to you. Verse 15, and another angel came out of the temple crying out with a loud voice to him, and they help us with the capital hymn to try to identify him, who sat on that cloud, put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, because of the harvest of the earth is ripe.
So this is obviously another angel who came directly from the temple.
Yeah.
And what seems strange is he's giving direction to Christ.
Yeah. So it's probably from the Father, I guess, right?
Yes.
But here's an angel involved in
the message from the Father to the Son.
Yeah, remember we talked about why does God even use angels? Why he could, like this one. He doesn't have to tell them, does he?
For John's purpose is to relay the information so that we can understand it properly.
Yeah,
that there was this communication that goes back and forth, and angels participate in all types of communications, so that we would know that that's the Father's directing the whole show. Yeah,
it's the same thing. I think this is part of our study with angels, is to realize he uses men, and he uses, like we've already studied, he uses John, even though Jesus knows John, right? We talked about that when we were in Revelation chapter 1. Jesus knows John, and yet he has decided to use an angel to help communicate the whole message of Revelation. There seems to be a purposeful design for angels as well as mankind to kind of have a representative of what is going on and participating in it. I mean, yeah, God could do it all, but he purposed like this. This seems odd for an angel to do the communication. Yeah, Hope.
Because it might not even be him. Like Jesus, of course, already knows what's about to happen, and also could just be announcing to the people what's about to happen.
And see, part of it is it's announcing. He tells them this, but all the angels are hearing, right? Yeah. All the angels hear what's going on and hear this announcement. And
so I don't think it's like letting God know, hey, it's time.
No.
I think it's for everyone else surrounding. Because again, the rest of the angels the same thing. They were with a loud voice, letting everyone know step by step what's about to happen.
And I think this is similar to when we think about praying, right? Because ultimately what happens is God prompts us to pray, and then we pray about it, and then He answers it, right? Because He wants us to participate and be involved in the whole process of knowing Him. You see what I mean? The angels are involved in what He's doing. And they give glory. Why? Because they participate.
I would say this has always been their way of giving glory to God.
Yep.
Is making the announcements, from the beginning.
Yeah, and again, that's why you see the variety. Sometimes, the Holy Spirit came to, say, Paul or whatever. Sometimes the angels stood by him. Well, the angels are, in a sense, we think somehow the angels are not bound by time, but I think they're having this same information that we have. They may have a little bit more in some regards observations, but they're understanding. That's why they're looking into salvation. They're observing. There are watchers. So back to you, Dave. What's coming?
Well, in the previous verses, we know that the judgment is coming.
Yeah.
And we know that it happens later. Well, prior to the judgment, God is going to remove the believers, the next group of believers, out from judgment.
Well, so we have to know whether or not is it moving believers out, or is it just deciding, which side you're on? That's what's hard. What we see is Jesus puts in his sickle, right? And
in 16 it says it was reaped, the earth was reaped. So
right.
That means
something happened. Okay. Now it could be talking about the end where he finally separates the sheep from the goats, type of a thing. It could be talking about giving us a snapshot of the whole period. Could be describing in a way that the decision, like Jesus says, the fields are white unto harvest, which means there's a time where they have to listen, then there's a time when they have to respond. Otherwise, it's kind of becomes a fixed determination, or consequences come.
Correct, like the previous verses where if you accept the mark, it's fixed.
Right. Yeah. So they get a chance to hear the message. Babylon gets taken out, and then they're warned about it, and then there's a judgment. And
so is this, probably going too far, but is this a continuous group of things, or are these pieces and parts of different things?
But this is, from what I see, it is the last 3.5 years. So it almost it narrows down. This is, if it happens at the end, it's still the end. It's just like this is so close to the end in the judgment. Okay. And the separation is going to take place at the end, anyways. So when Jesus comes back.
In the beginning, we talked about the authority that Satan is given. And we were talking about these angels in their announcement. They're doing it with a lot of voice and everybody hearing. That's quite a bit of authority itself.
Yep.
It shows in contrast of his authority.
None of us could talk that loud. No. We're talking about like how loud. Remember the I don't know if you remember, because we had talked about before. Remember, it says the sound that came was like the sound of
rushing waters.
Like the sound of a cherub. It's just like, I don't know what that sound is. I don't know what sound of a cherub. It says that he'll descend with the voice of an archangel. Okay, it must be loud. They must be able to. This is a loud voice in multiple languages or whatever they're hearing. So, is that And so, 16, they swung. He sat on the cloud, swung a sickle over the earth, and the earth was reaped. So there's a judgment time. 17, hope, and another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, and he also had a sharp sickle. What do we find out about the angel there?
Another one came out, and he was on the same mission.
Yep.
Afterwards, so I don't know. Again, we don't know what the first part was, like what actually happened, but nothing really good doesn't seem like. So.
Yep. It seems mostly negative here. It seems like a judgment. It seems like you already have the sealed people. But we'll find out. Why don't you take this one too, Hope, since you got a chance to do two. It says 14, 18, it says, "Then another angel, the one who had the power over fire, came out of the altar, and he called with a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, 'Put in your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, because her grapes are ripe.'" Okay, so this one's
another angel besides the one who had the sickle.
Right.
Came out. He had the power of fire. So that's another.
What does that tell you? This could be a permanent aspect, right?
Yeah.
Angels could have power of fire, or a temporary aspect given by God, right?
Yeah, I feel like it's not saying it's he has the power over fire. So in a sense, it could be an angel that just has the ability to rain down fire.
Right. Because it's going to be raining down some fire coming up soon, too. So, in the chapters that follow. So.
It seems that, like, not saying each angel has a specific job, but in a way it does. Each one has their own direction that they're following.
If he had the power of fire, say for instance, this may be the only time that he uses it. It may be in other aspects that he uses fire, like say for instance, like in Sodom and Gomorrah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
What about his voice?
This came out from the altar. Does that?
That means they're. Yeah. So the altar is the close proximity to God, and if you look through the book of Revelation, usually what happens before the judgment begins, we see a picture in heaven, and we see it related to the whole altar, the worship of God, and from that worship comes the judgment. So it may be getting the fire that's going to bring judgment, which is connected to the wrath of God because of
Isn't
God's.
the altars where they sacrifice the animals too?
In the Old Testament, yeah. And so you have the New Testament altar type of a thing, the sacrifice. But from the sacrifice, what you see is from God's place of being honored in sacrifice comes the judgment.
And then he's also telling, it's kind of weird, as if each one comes out and tells each other what to do. So
yeah.
He came out and told the one that just came out, hey, it's time. So get it sharpened, get it ready. It's just about to happen.
Yeah. And what are we going to do with the grapes of...
Again, it doesn't... They keep on using different analogies. So
yeah.
It's like...
Well, we're going to know it in the next verse.
Okay.
This part of it, this one with the angel has a definitely negative.
Okay.
Now so Christ could be the positive one, and this could be the negative.
Yeah, because both of them are using a sickle.
Yep.
They're not the same sickle.
Yeah, they're not the same swiping.
Right.
It's the same, yeah.
But they're also done by two different. One's done by Christ, and the other one's done by angels. So
right.
It seems to be a separation.
It just, again, the idea is that interaction between the angels communicating. Remember, you have to remember, this is a vision in the future that John and the angel with John are actually viewing, and they're talking about it. So this thing hasn't happened yet, and they're talking about it. So, kind of an interesting thing to have an angel like, hey, human representative John, the angelic representative, we are going into the future, and I'll explain to you what the future is like we're watching it and hearing it dialogue, which is kind of bends our minds as far as how the whole. How do you have a vision? Who's in charge of the vision? You know, who's in charge of the screens? I mean, we know also that Satan was able to show Christ all the kingdoms of the earth. So it just gives us a different idea of angels, I think. Okay, Anne. 14:19. So the angel swung the sickle on the earth and gathered the clusters from the vine of the earth and threw them into the great wine press of the wrath of God.
Okay, so the same angel that we just talked about, it's a judgment. It swung his sickle to the earth and gathered the ones that didn't know Jesus. Well, this is judgment. Didn't know the Lord, acknowledged the Lord.
Probably had the mark.
Right.
Yep.
And the mark, and threw them into the great wine press of the wrath of God.
And a wine press is where you put the wine in, and what do they do at the wine press?
Yeah, they squeeze the juice out.
How do they squeeze the juice out in that day?
Step on it.
Yeah, they smashed it all with their feet, yeah. So that's how they did it.
Yeah.
All right, anything else?
they suffered eternal punishment.
Yeah, well, we'll find out about that, yes. Alicia, verse 20. It says, the wine press was trotted outside the city, and the blood came out from the wine press up to the horse's bridle for a distance of 200 miles. This is actually, this is Armageddon is what this is. So.
Okay, this is like bloodshed, right?
Yep.
Okay.
This is.
So it's going to happen outside the city, like outside of Jerusalem?
Yep.
Okay.
So they show up, and the angel stomps them. They get stomped, basically. 200 miles is a long distance. That's a lot of.
About 4.5 feet.
Yep. So this is all about what the angel is announcing in the wrath of God. So, all right. Let's jump to Revelation 15:1. Aaron, I saw another angel sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels who had 7 plagues, which are the last, because in them the wrath of God is finished.
We have another angel.
Yep.
Seems to describe his ability. His great, marvelous.
How many angels?
It says 7.
7 angels, yeah. 7 angels, and what do they got? The 7.
Each one has a plague that
Yep.
they carry.
So they bring God's judgment of wrath. This is the final 7 plagues. So, delivered by angels. Any other? There's not much. No. Okay. Verse 6. Warrendale, and the 7 angels who had the 7 plagues came out of the temple clothed in linen, clean and bright, girded around their chests with a gold sash. What does it tell you about angels there?
Well, they're holy, but they're, so the other 7 plagues came out of the temple.
So,
After they finished their work, they went to the temple, and it came out.
they haven't started yet.
They haven't started yet?
Yeah, they start from the temple. They get kind of the stuff for their plagues from the temple.
Oh.
The dwelling place of God, the manifestation of His presence. How are they dressed?
And clean, white clothes.
Yep. So they can dress differently, right? They actually have clothes of some sort, right? They're clothing. They're not just like pure white. So they have some sort of clothing here. Remember, we realized the cherub looked different. We realized that angels out of the abyss look different. You know, when the angels out of the abyss, they have, the hair like a woman and a face like, a lion.
Well, just like the angels that came down when Jesus rose, they were in white.
Yeah, so they were just in white shining clothes. But here is this clean linen. They are clean and bright. They had stuff around their waist. So which means they look like what? Do they look like the cherub?
No.
Do they look like men? I mean, is that the clothes of men?
It seems like it's men,
And those are. Do you recognize any clothes related to the Old Testament?
When the high priest wore those garments.
Yes, some of those aspects relate to His being in His presence. Looking back to the Old Testament. Golden sash. Linen, maybe he's clothed in linen, clean and bright and white, so everything looks. But again, they could just be. Remember, they're spirits, but they look like men, so they're actually described in their appearance. Anything else?
I just know their chest with the golden sashes.
Yeah. So they got this golden sash, right? So they must have chest to have gold. Right? You understand, they have chest, so that it's not like the cherub don't look at all like, 6 wings, they don't look like men.
Well, I know if you see something like that come
4 heads.
you're going to really realize it's not from our world.
Yeah, so here they are in some sort of appearance that throws back to the image in the Old Testament. Sue, you guys love this Revelation stuff with so many details, right? Well, and the thing is, remember, it's not understanding, just seeing remember, all the angels help us to understand who God is in some way. The variety, the distinction. We don't have to know every detail of the future necessarily that's going to happen. We may not even be here. You understand? The whole point is that, but God does want us to know that He just doesn't say, well, this is what's going to happen. He is showing it, angels involved, men involved in what happens. And so that's why we're kind of probing, because we're looking at God made angels for a purpose. They're not just like pets. They're not just messengers. They're actually intelligent beings that have powers and authority, and God uses them, and they're the only other sentient beings in the universe besides us. You understand? All the rest of them are animals. Animals aren't like on the same scale. These are other creatures that actually think, have wills, and decide things. They speak. So even though it may be difficult, I think it's worth the extra. Revelation 15:7 says, "Then one of the 4 living creatures gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of God who lives forever and ever." 4 living creatures, who are they?
The angels, the cherubim?
Cherub, yep. Cherubim what's the difference between cherub and cherubim?
Plural.
Plural?
Yeah.
Very good. You remember it. Good. That's the plural.
Okay, so one of them gave to the other 7 angels 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of God.
Where is the 4 living creatures normally at? Besides in the garden swinging the sword, but normally where's their station? Where are they hanging out usually?
Near God.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're probably near the altar, and so they're like, so here you have them taking from the altar, right? Mm-hmm. And passing it to the other angels, the wrath of God. So here's one angel so it appears to be that the 4 living creatures have an authority above this other angel. Do you see that, or does that, or at least the function to do that? So.
Okay, so the 4, you're saying the 4 have.
Yeah, they have kind of they have altar duty close to the presence of God, and then they pass the wrath of God out in these bowls.
So it's almost like the imagery from the Levites, the high priest, and the priest that went up, that attended the showbread, the altar, each of them having different duties.
Yeah, there wasn't much wrath that happened because of the altar. The only thing you could do is if you had an unfaithful wife, that I remember, they mix it with some of the stuff on the altar. But otherwise, you don't see much wrath related that I can remember taking from the altar. But it's kind of like this is an act of worship, a display of God's greatness because it's coming from that avenue. The picture is to give us an idea that this is because they don't fear God and because God deserves to be honored. Therefore, they're taking from that and bringing judgment because of it. Anything else, Sue?
Just that.
Who lives forever?
The wrath of God, that who lives forever and ever.
Yep. Describing who God is, right? He's not just temporary. Aaron, and the temple was filled with the smoke of the glory of God and His power. No one was able to enter the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were finished. What can you tell me about the angels and about their ability to access this temple area?
Yeah, so no one was able to enter the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were finished. So they were gatekeepers of the temple.
Yeah.
The smoke from the glory of God reminds us of the glory of God that came down to the tent of meeting during the wilderness wanderings as God's glory moved among His people. This was a time of judgment, though, in His coming.
I mean, isn't it interesting that here you have that? So there must be this picture of the temple, like the one that talks about the mercy seat that's in Hebrews. The copy, the earth is a copy, and there's an original, but there must be some spatialness, right? Because they can't enter it.
Yeah.
There's just some sort of spatial difference. I don't know who has access, right? I mean, who's limited here? I mean, they already tossed Satan and his demons out of heaven, so they don't have access. So there's some sort of imagery, but so everything is clicking along based upon the 7 angels, right? Waiting for that to take place.
Well, I wonder, because the one cherub came out with the bowls.
Yeah.
If all of them had to leave.
Yep.
Like none of them could, because they were always standing in His presence. It's like nobody could withstand this wrath.
Which really shows some really unique kind of judgment. Which means it must have been common access, angels having access to the temple. Otherwise it wouldn't make any sense if they were excluded from it.
Right.
I mean, it just gives us an idea of picture. So, all right, we're all done. Hopefully your brain isn't hurt.